Obviously, I know now you say it was a bad matchup, but look, Powell got a fourth round knockout in his pro debut up against a man. A man. It wasn't. This was a man he was fighting, not a young man,
Right,
not a
because
young guy. I mean, he was
those
a man.
those rounds, I told him, look, it would have been nice to get you a 30-second blowout, a minute blowout, but these rounds and that you had to think and work, those are going to benefit you in the long run.
Hey, coach, I got some people that are watching. And they're saying there's an echo.
There is a bad echo.
Is it because I don't hear an echo on my end? Let me see.
It's really bad.
Let's see.
That's why I'm pausing in between when I speak. There it goes. But I can hear it now. But it's not as bad.
Hear the echo?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you?
Okay.
Is the echo bad?
It's there.
Hmm. Because somebody's saying they can't hear anything. Let me just make sure it's not. And because you're wearing headphones.
Yeah, do you want me to take them off, see if it works?
Yeah, try taking them off, and maybe the echo. Maybe it'll
Mm.
go away.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
It's still
If
there.
anybody's out there, let me know if there's still an echo.
Still an echo? I could hear it, yeah.
You can hear the echo.
Yeah, I could hear it.
Hmm. Oh, somebody's saying good, no echo. So
Okay, let's roll. Let's roll with it.
out there, there's no echo. Okay. So we're talking about Pow Barredo, the 18-year-old phenom. Um, we're going to talk about Chris Arreola in a little bit, but Chris was kind of famous for not wanting to train, but Pow, who's 18, he's the exact opposite.
Yeah, no, and look, I think a lot of that has to do with the gap in age. I'm 48, Pal's 18. Chris and I were 5 years apart. But you had a chance to sit down with Chris yourself. He's pretty candid and open about how he felt about training. He said it was more of a chore to him and he didn't like it. And he always related back to like his dad telling him what to do, and he always took it as I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to train. You know.
Oh man, somebody's saying the echo's worse now. Let me check one thing.
Okay.
All right, let me see.
Can we stop with the self-care weeks? Like, what if we did adult weeks instead? Think about it. Instead of laying in bed.
All right, coach, say a few things.
Can you hear me? Still there?
All right, coach, say a few things.
Can you hear me? Still there?
Yeah, I can still hear it, but it doesn't. Oh man, it doesn't sound that bad. We're gonna keep rolling, man.
Right. Let's keep rolling.
But yeah, so yes, I got to sit down with Chris, and he was very candid on his outlook on training. I had a clip, but I didn't get a chance to load it up. Remember the HBO show Ring Life that we used
I
to do?
recall it. I remember when they came and filmed us.
So there's a clip, and I'm pissed that I didn't clip it off. Um, I'm pissed that I didn't clip it off, but there is a shot of you and Chris running in one of the episodes. You were running with him, and Chris said he probably ran like 20 miles in his whole career. But it was this hilly place, and you and Chris were running together, man. I couldn't believe it.
George, there's a crazy. People don't believe me, man. I run right now. I'm about 80, now about 75 days straight running. I run a
Wow.
lot. I run. People don't. I run. I ran cross country. I told you I ran cross country when I was in seventh and eighth grade. Running was always fun to me. Even when I would drink and eat like crap, I would always run. So it's pretty natural to me. Chris told you openly. I probably ran 20 miles my entire career. He hated running. Hated.
We talked about this a lot when I was there, but it had to be hard for you with a guy that had so much talent and so much potential, and he never quite worked as hard as he
He should
should
have.
have.
No. I can tell you how every single camp went because I can remember. Ones that stand out to me. The Damian Bolo Wills camp, great camp. Seth Mitchell camp, great camp. The second Severn fight where he got clipped in the world title fight, great camp. Tomas Adamek, no. Klitschko, no. Um, the first Severn fight, oh, pathetic. Um, let's see, Travis Walker camp, so. I remember everything about every camp.
You know, you gave me an interesting answer. I asked you if
I know
when you
what you're
look.
gonna ask. I repeated this to someone, and I
Go
remember the
ahead.
look you gave me. Go ahead. I'm sorry, but I remember the look you gave me.
I was gonna ask you, and I don't know if you're picking up on what I was gonna ask, but do you think he maximized his potential?
And I said he got the most out of his effort. Yeah, I
Which I
remember
thought
that.
was a very interesting answer because then you go back to what kind of effort did he give, and um, yeah, I can't wait for this doc to come out because Chris was, he's been truthful before,
Right.
um, and he talked about regret, but how did you stay with him? Because I mean, it was frustrating for you because
Very
you can't.
frustrating. Very frustrating at times. You he left you questioning a lot, like what the hell is wrong with this guy? Or what the F is this guy thinking? I'll never forget. Maybe after we had hired Daryl Hudson, a pretty well known and highly regarded strength conditioning coach.
Yep.
By the way, I think the echo's gone.
Yeah,
Um,
I took my mic out, so I think this will
yeah.
work better.
So we hired Daryl Hudson after the Jamil McCline fight in April of '09. And I'll tell you an interesting story about that. I would see Daryl all week. Jamil McCline, or Christopher and Jamil McCline, Paul Williams was fighting Winky Wright. So Winky Wright, Florida, I would see Daryl, conditioning coach Dan Birmingham. His trainer's like, oh man, you want a conditioning coach? Hire this man, Daryl Hudson. Just giving him a ringing endorsement, right? I'm like, damn. Okay. Chris and I look at each other like, man, maybe we'll give this guy a call. I keep running into him all week from Monday, Tuesday, late night in the elevator. So I'm like, hey, what's up? Say what's up. And we end up exchanging info. And I'm like, hey, I thought you lived in Florida. He's like, nah. He gives me a number. He lives 10 minutes from me. So we ended up connecting with him. We went to the yard house. and
Ah,
we consummated the deal. We hired him. And as he started working with us, I think Chris was about maybe 25, 26 and 0. And he found out a little early how frustrating it can be. And he asked me, how the hell did you guys even get this far? Because it was like pulling teeth. Interestingly enough, though, Daryl is going to be working with Pow on his strength and conditioning.
oh
So
wow. Well, it's such a different. It's got to be. Look, I was never a boxing coach. I was a track coach, but I know when you work with athletes that want to work, it just makes things so much easier.
the morale is it's very upbeat, very live. The morale is great. You know, um, and look, like I said, there were camps where Chris was motivated, put in the work, and the morale was just great. But there were times I'd be like, okay, when? When is this guy going to disappear? When is he going to go off the deep end? And thankfully, there were some camps where no, everything went smooth, and I was like, "Phew, we got through that one."
But I mean, I can't imagine like day by. It's like like what's the Alcohol Anonymous thing? It's like 24 hours. It's like what's
Right,
one step at a time, whatever their phrase is.
right,
Like with
right.
Chris, it's like, man, day by day. Like you
Yeah,
hope
no, it
that he
literally
shows up the
was.
next day.
It literally was. There were times, there were days where early in his career, like if he was gonna ditch, he would ditch the off sparring days and be there for the hard sparring, right? Then as he got a little older, it got harder to get him to spar, because the wear and tear. He hated sparring. Whereas before, earlier in his career, he loved sparring. He would miss out on the opposite days. Then as he got later in his career, he hated sparring. I mean, it was like pulling teeth to get him in there to spar sometimes. He would show up on the days to do all the other stuff, but he hated sparring towards the end.
That's funny because I feel like some fighters they just want to spar and they don't want to do anything else.
Yeah,
But
that was him
Chris, it
early in his
was
career. That was
what
early in his career. Once we got to the later third, last quarter of it, he hated sparring. Hated it.
well, what year was it that he fought Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko?
September 2009.
So 2009 he gets a shot at the heavyweight crown, and I also watched the old ring lights, and it's just like you guys said, Magic Johnson like greeted you guys walking
Yeah, right
in.
when we got there. Right when we got there.
You
He
know,
was
Mike
great.
Tyson is in the locker room. That I asked you this when I interviewed you guys, but again, talk about that environment because this was, I mean, Chris is, you guys are both originated in LA, moved to
Yeah.
Riverside, but the Klitschko fight, Staples Center, LA, it's at home.
Southern
So
California, it was huge. Like I said, like we spoke about last week, is that he had been on HBO before. He had fought in Vegas. He'd fought in some big fights. But this obviously fighting for the heavyweight title, it felt different. It felt different. Not that you were consumed by the moment, but you recognize, hey, this is huge. This is big. Main event, Staples Center, Mexican American heavyweight trying to make history. There was a lot riding on it, a tremendous amount riding on it. And you asked me, did the pressure ever get to Chris? And he never came to me or intimated to us like, hey, the pressure's too much. He never said. To me, he enjoyed his limelight. He enjoyed his name, and I think he was pretty open about that to you also. You know what I mean? He was pretty open about a lot of stuff. But it
yeah,
it, it definitely was huge. The event, the the event itself, and what could have transpired on the historical aspect was huge. I'm not going to downplay that in any way.
he that was one of you were listing all the training camps and like this one was good, this one was bad, that one was not a good one. Klitschko,
It wasn't bad, but it wasn't to what you would expect when you're fighting for the biggest prize in the sport of boxing. It wasn't that. I'll say that because
uh,
George, I often say that being prepared guarantees you absolutely nothing. It doesn't guarantee you're
right.
gonna win. It just means you giving yourself the best chance to win. I don't feel Chris always gave us the best chance to win. You know,
That night though, I mean, this is I don't know if it's a fair question or not, but if he had done everything you wanted, say he came in at 240 and just was in fantastic shape, do you think it would have made a difference against Vitaly Klitschko, who was a beast back then?
based on the performance I seen, though, would it have been more competitive? Would he been able to push it? Probably, yeah. I think it would have been more competitive. Would we have won based on the way the fight played out? And probably not. We were a pretty considerable underdog. I remember, a couple years later, as fights were starting to play out, I remember Dan Goosen asking me, like, Henry, maybe we do Arreola and Klitschko again. And I said, it better be Vladimir because I
Right.
have no interest in the Vitaly fight. And he was actually talking about Vitaly, and I just said, I think he would be better prepared, but I don't see the outcome being different. I told him. And I was just being honest. I was being honest. I always told
Yeah.
him my chances against Vladimir. I always felt style wise that was the better matchup for us.
Right.
Too bad we never got it.
Well, you stopped that fight and Chris was very emotional and I do
Blood
have
coming now from the
this is from Ring
nostrils
Lights.
of Chris Arreola.
Right.
Too
This is
heavy
the
a
very
price
end of the
trying
fight.
to get inside on him.
And this is the point where you stopped it.
Arreola's trainer Henry Ramirez has seen enough.
That's it.
No. Sorry, it's over. Sorry, baby.
Al,
Sorry, baby. Sorry, Chris. What a hell of a fight.
That's it. I'm sorry, bro.
Yeah, he was pretty emotional.
Yeah, I mean, when
Pretty
you see that
emotional.
now, how do you feel? Because you did the right thing, and Chris was upset, but I think he
Absolutely.
understood.
No, yeah, he's always told me. Like I said, the only two people, George, that would constantly question why I stopped that fight was Chris's wife and Chris's daughter.
Really?
I swear to God. People, they would, she'd always be like, and his daughter was young at the time. She could have been more than 9. Why'd you stop the fight? And his wife's like, hey, well, you're the one who stopped the fight. And I asked her, hey, did you have a life insurance policy you were trying to collect on or something? But no, I felt comfortable then, and people would joke about it. Um, but no, and like I told you in the segment we did last week is there are a lot of factors that go into the fight. What's the possible, like, if Vitali had a history of maybe getting caught late or being knocked out, but he had never been knocked down, locked out, let alone knocked out.
Right.
And the chances were very slim. Very, I there was no way it was going to happen. Vitali was in complete control and very, very calm. Even though Chris was putting a lot of pressure early, he just knew how to maneuver you and stay relaxed. And he's a big, imposing man, and he stands tall. He's not a guy who gives up the fight. He seems even bigger the way he carries himself. But I felt comfortable in my decision, just like I do 15 years later. We're talking about it now, and you did ask me some interesting things when we were at dinner, and you were asking me, how do I feel? How did and how did I get over it? And I remember I went home that night and I started watching a couple clips of fights, and I had been over it for a long time. And then when we actually sat down and talked about it on camera, I was like, damn, this is pissing me off again. Like it was reliving, rehashing some bad memories, and of course a lot of good ones too.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, there's definitely bad and good, but
Right.
I mean, I do remember you saying, you said it about his wife, but you said when people would say, "Why'd you stop the fight?" You would say, "What were
Well,
you
did you not
watching?"
watch? Yeah, did you not watch? This is the true story. I have a I have a cousin, well, quite a few cousins, who are incarcerated. One's, I think he's been in since about 20 years. And I
Wow.
don't know how this guy was watching the fight. He was on HBO, and they're passing the phone around Christmas. Hey man, how you doing? Hey, like, swear to God, George, first thing, hey, why did you stop the fight? I'm like, what the I'm like, were you but you know what I don't think people understand what plays into stopping a fight. Chris was 27 or 28 at the time. He was still going to have a career moving forward. There were still going to be great opportunities for him. There were still going to be big money opportunities for him. If he had been a guy, end of his career, his last hurrah, maybe you let it go. But nah,
Right.
this was his first crack at a title, and it was young, and he still had a career ahead of him. So it was the right call.
You know what? Something that he said, that Chris said, because he kept going out round after round, even when he really couldn't do much.
Right.
He said he was always influenced by the first Julio Cesar Chavez Meldrick Taylor fight, where Chavez was behind, but he kept coming, and landed that shot. And Chris said to me, he said, "I always thought I can land that shot. I can land that shot and get him out of there." But two different fights. This fight wasn't quite
Absolutely.
like Chavez Taylor.
Absolutely, because though Chavez was losing, he had quite a bit more moments in the fight than Chris did. He was getting out boxed, but you could see Meldrick physically breaking down in his face, and internally he was winning, but he was hanging on by a thread as each round going. That Vitali was in complete control from throughout.
Yeah. I really wish I would have put that clip on. Well, you probably have the ring lights, but I'll send it to you later. Seeing you and Chris running, and we talked
Yeah,
about how much he hated running, and
he
there's
hates
clips
it.
of you and him running.
Yeah, he hates it. He make no secrets about it. He made no secrets about it.
And by the way, I don't want to make this all about Chris, but he's 43. And by the way, we did have dinner at the Yard House in Riverside. It was a great dinner. He looks great. And we talked about the would he fight again? And he said he wants to, but realistically, like, what do you see happening?
George, it's funny you were talking about this because I think the day after you left, I had got an offer for him to fight in Texas. Favorable opponent. They want a name, and we had actually talked about this last summer. And I think now and then yesterday, Bare Knuckle reaches out to me and they're interested in putting him on. Whereas last year he shot it down. I think this year he might be a little more open to it. I mean, he's a big name still, a name that would be pretty big in the Bare Knuckle. So, and they're making a pretty sizable offer. So it may happen him in Bare Knuckle.
Wow, bare
Yeah.
knuckles. So I'm assuming would you be with him for that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was hammering out the deal yesterday, and I pitched it to him, and you could see there's some intrigue. There's some far more interest this time around than there was last year.
So what about actual boxing though? Do you think that's done and over, or is it still yet
No,
to be
no,
written?
because we got an offer for him to fight April 26th in El Paso, and they had pitched me last summer, and I think he wants to do both. I think he wants to try to do both.
Well, look, I mean, this sport, not that long ago, Oliver McCall, the former heavyweight champion, had a fight. He's 59. I'm not
Right,
advocating that
right.
you fight that late, but um, and also Chris, by the way, when we had dinner, Chris doesn't look bad. I mean, I'm sure he's not in stupendous shape, but he looked pretty slim. He looked like he's
Appear,
taking better care of himself.
yeah, appearance wise, he told you I haven't trained in a year, but he's lighter walking. But I think it's also probably some lifestyle changes. He's a little bit older now, and he's not out as much as he used to be. Of course,
Yeah, unfortunately, with age comes wisdom, and some
wisdom.
people don't have the wisdom. But you got Pow,
The
who
elevator
see
rule, George. The elevator rule. You hope the mental part catches up with the physical part high, not low. You know what I mean?
right,
Where does the mental and physical part touch on the same floor? You always hope that's on a high floor, not
right.
on the lower aspect. But we also got some other good prospects. Louis Lopez, who's a guy with me who's been with me since he was 15. Good, rugged, Josecito type guy. Nelson Oliva, 12-0, 154 pounder. So we've got some other guys who are going to be making some noise, and as well as Powell. And we may get Chris back in there. So it's busy times. I do have a pretty busy and consistent amateur program as well. So I wanted to make sure I throw those guys' names out there too because there are some guys who are going to be making a move.
Yeah, you talking about you and your love for this because I've been around you during your day. You've got busy days. You work with amateurs, you work with pros, you work with kids. Um, that the love that you have for this because look, you're a professional. You get paid when you're with the pros, but
Right.
when you're with the amateurs, when you're working with kids, you don't get paid for your time.
No, that's all my time. And to me, that's the investment. That's the investment of my time. Um, but it's rewarding. It's rewarding to see, like, we take 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids to fight. And at the end of the fight, they're in center ring and they're on one knee praying in them. Their names announced the winner, man. That joy it's pure, man. It's pure. It's pretty great to see when a 9, 10-year-old kid is, happy. He got his hand raised, got a little trophy, then he's posting for Instagram. It's pretty cool. It's pretty rewarding to see that.
And not all these kids are going to be professionals, and most of them probably won't. But a lot of people don't understand boxing. I'm also a lifer like you, but they don't get what it means. Give people a sense of why this sport is important for a lot of kids in their lives?
So I'm glad you hit on that, George. There's a few reasons because you're right. Not every kid's gonna aspire to be a pro fighter. Not every kid's gonna aspire to be the next Canelo or Mayweather. Some kids use it as an outlet to gain confidence or you know, to gain physical fitness. And they can use that whatever we've learned, whatever we've taught them, and they've learned, they can use that to whatever aspect of life they end up choosing. Not everybody's going to be a pro fighter. Not all the kids want to be that. Some will do it for a few years, and I've had kids who do it for a few years and come back like, man, I never forgot what I learned here. I thank you because it helped set me in a different path in life. With at least I had some discipline, some structure. So it's kind of helped them in other aspects. And that's always rewarding to hear also.
I know you boxed as
Mhm.
well. When you were younger, did you, I mean, I imagine you had those same dreams that you probably wanted to be a champion. What happened with your career as a boxer?
So I boxed for like 9 years. I was having fun doing it. I would train hard. I loved running. Um, And then it just got to the point where like working a job, had a daughter.
Hmm.
Then I started losing. So I get how some of these guys lose the interest, and I try to reel them back in. But I always, I never do this to the fighters. I never say, "Oh, when I box or when it's because it's about them."
Right.
So I always can understand when I've got a fighter that also has a family. He also works. You know what I mean? Um, the one thing I didn't do though, I fought in Southern California mainly. I think I fought in Vegas and Arizona. But the way we actively go to all the national tournaments, we didn't do that when I was.
Hmm.
Now I tell the kids, look, like if your parents gonna pay for your license, it's like $90 a year. We're gonna try to get you 10 to 12 fights a year. That should be the goal for all the amateur kids, barring injuries and stuff. And
Right.
there is no off season. Boxing doesn't have an off season.
Yep.
But George, we're not Neanderthals. We're not like, running a boot camp. We understand the kids are kids. So say we come back from a national tournament. I may tell the kids, hey man, take a week off, take 2 weeks off, go be a kid, go eat whatever you want, and then we'll start again in 2 weeks. No lie,
Well,
3 days into that, their kids are like, "Hey, I'm back in the gym." I was like, "No, I want you to go home because when you get older, I don't want to hear, oh, I got burnt out. I didn't have
right.
this." No, go guys, do it. Most of the kids we have don't want to do that. They're afraid of being outworked, which is great.
Well, that the day I was with you guys, I interviewed you first and then Chris, and our interview ran a little late. And when we were finished, you had a group of kids. As soon as we were done, within 5 minutes, that gym was filled with kids. And when
Real.
I got there, you had already been there for hours working with your pros.
Right.
So, I mean, your day was full. And by the time we left, again, your gym, it was full of kids.
Yeah, full of kids. Yep, full of kids, man. Full of
Hey, did
amateur kids.
did you ever fight pro?
No, no,
You were
never
just an
fought pro.
amateur.
Just an amateur. And then it was funny because when I got to the point where like, okay, you lose the fire, you lose okay, the discipline part, like, okay, I this is not a sport where you want to play around. So then I just told my old trainer, hey, I'm not gonna fight anymore, man. And then he's oh, take a couple weeks off. Then he's like, come help me, come help me. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And I'm gonna be going to the shows, getting it's the same thing I'm doing, but I'm not competing, right? So, like I said, never did I think that when I did that in 2000 or 99, like 2000, never did I think it was going to be to where I'm at now in 2025.
25
Yeah,
years later.
yeah, yeah. Now, I mean, I train fighters, but I also manage them, and
I was going to
I'm,
bring
I'm
that up.
yeah, I'm thankful for people along the way through the years who I've learned so much about the business from. Al Heyman, Alex Campanovo, Dan Goose, and Brad Goodman. I mean, countless conversations and interactions throughout the years. Even with Hayden, I've learned so much about the business. So much that we've even done our own pro shows recently. We did 3 pro shows last year that I also run also. So I do my amateurs, my own pro fighters. I train them, and then in between my gym session, the phone is nonstop with guys trying to get on our card, me trying to get my fighters a fight somewhere, setting up sparring. So it's constant. The phone doesn't stop. And interestingly enough, we were taking my fighter Nelson Oliva to spar in LA, and I used to tell him like, dude, the phone never stops. And he's like, nah, you're over exaggerating. So we drove in traffic, and he's like, dude, your phone hasn't stopped ringing. I said, bro, I told you I wasn't, I wasn't messing around. It really is, it's constant. It really is constant.
Well, how do you manage this and juggle it? Because you said there's no off season. So how do you have a life with managing and training and working with kids and pros?
Great question. So a deal, George, I could be anywhere as long as I'm phone accessible. I could be at dinner. I could be at a basketball game. I can when give you an example when Deontay Wilder was fighting Alexander Povetkin and Povetkin tested dirty for steroids
Yep.
as Wilder was flying there. I made the deal with Al Heyman as I was driving to a Dodger game. Mind you, Chris was in the car with me. He didn't really know what was going on. I just told him, hey, I'll tell you afterwards. And we were driving up to a Dodger game, and that was around May May of 16. I remember we were driving to a Dodger game, and I thought when I first seen that, I go, man, Povetkin style, Chris Saint, oh, maybe we get the call. Sure enough, we did 4 week notice, um, but yeah, so you can literally consummate a deal anywhere as long as your phone accessible. And people always tell me like, or ask me like, why are you always on the phone? And I say, a missed call could be a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And in this sport, it really is true.
So do you ever get just like 2 days or a day where you can just, man, I'm unplugging, no phone, no computer, no nothing?
No, I can't. I can't.
Wow.
But there are days where I won't. I try not to bug anybody boxing related on Sunday, and I absolutely will not answer a boxing related call unless it's someone really close to my inner circle or it's extremely urgent. But for the most part, I try to leave Sundays to people for their own Sundays, and I try to leave that mine also. I try not to answer. Most of my Sundays are consumed with football. It's my favorite sport,
Yeah.
by far. But just in the time I've been on the phone with you, I've had 4 boxing calls that I put the voicemail.
Wow. Well, I'm not going to keep you too much longer, I
No,
promise, because I
I'm
know.
good. I love talking about this stuff, man. It's great. I've got to travel a lot. It's provided me a great livelihood and far more than I ever expected going in because I didn't expect anything going in. But I've also put a lot of work in. I put a lot of
Yeah.
work into this, and it's been rewarding. It's been very rewarding to me.
So, I keep talking about this dinner that I had with you and Chris, and when I knew I was coming out there, I said to you, I said, "Hey, let's try and have dinner when I get out there," because I had never met Chris. I had met you, but I never met
Right,
Chris. You know the what? And it was a great night, man. Great
right.
conversation.
It
But
was
the funniest thing was, now I didn't know Chris made lifestyle changes. I'm thinking like, oh, like I don't want to like drink in front of Chris. I don't want Chris to start drinking or anything. So you ordered your food, I ordered mine. All Chris ordered was a little thing of mac and cheese. And I'm like,
right.
wait, this is Chris Arreola? The guy, he didn't even finish his mac
He
and
didn't
cheese.
finish it. You and I finished our food. I looked over too. I glanced. I was like, "What?" But he's he loves that mac and cheese. They throw mushrooms in there, chicken, bacon. Like he loves that mac and cheese. Since that Yard House opened in '07, he's always loved that mac and cheese. He's big. Me, I like that jambalaya that you seen me having.
Yeah, well, he didn't even finish it that
He
day.
didn't finish it.
He had to
Yeah.
take it home, and it was not a big serving of mac and cheese.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, man.
it's good to see him, taking care of himself.
Right,
The business of boxing, boxing, it, as you know, it's the only sport where you can turn pro if you're in shape and you get the proper tests done
right.
and you get a license. You can say I'm a pro fighter. You can't turn pro in basketball and
Right,
football, but
right,
you can also throw a towel over your shoulder and say, "Hey, I'm a trainer."
right,
You
right.
know, the business of the sport.
It's funny you hit on that, George, because I just posted this on my Instagram, like the first or second day of the new year. I said, hey, just a little free game to some of you who are trying to make it in this sport. Um, I said, if you hope to have any type of longevity, please understand that the business of boxing and the sport of boxing are two entirely different things, and you might
Yep.
benefit yourself to learn the difference if you haven't, And it really is, because I know a lot of people who know the inside the gym and breaking down a fighter and the intricacies of a fight, but are completely clueless on the business side and don't know a fighter's value, don't know the value of a TV fight, whether you're the main event, co-main, opener, off TV. Like there's so many variables, who you're fighting, short notice, long, there's so many things that go into factoring what a fight is worth for a particular fighter. Um, the business is the business is a cutthroat business. It's the one business where I don't care how smart you are, what type of business degree you have. If you don't understand the sport, the business of the way the boxing works, you're going to be consumed and swallowed up and chewed out, because it's just completely different. I've seen a lot of successful people in other avenues of life completely fail in boxing
Well,
because
it's
they come in with the mentality that, oh, it's boxing. I know I was successful here. That doesn't always apply. That doesn't. There's plenty of people who've come into the sport, throw money at it, and left it.
look, Jay-Z got into boxing. He was going to be a big time, he was going to be in boxing big time, and it didn't work out. So, like you
Mm-mm.
said, just because you have money, if you don't have knowledge of the business, it doesn't mean anything.
No, yeah, you definitely got to have knowledge of the business. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to learn from some very good people. Oh, hold on, I'm having trouble here, and it's been rewarding to me. Um, but I learned so much from over the years. Dealing with Dan Goosen and, like I said, Alex Campanovo, um, countless conversations with Brad Goodman, um, and then just kind of learning stuff on my own. Learning stuff on my own. I was involved in every aspect of like Chris's career,
Yeah.
Josesito's career, Marcos Hernandez, Josh. Well, we had a lot of local, Richard Brewer. You remember him?
Yep.
And then even now, there's some guys that reach out to me that are in other areas that I don't necessarily train because they're not here. But they ask me, hey man, I could use your input or some advice on some fights, and would you be interested in helping, manage my career? Sure, no problem. And then we got into doing some shows. So George, I know the ins and outs of the business, but I didn't know, excuse me, every in and out of running a show in California.
Right.
It from securing a venue to securing the bond, the type of ambulance you have to have, the seating, to pricing alcohol, to pricing tickets, what's our maximum capacity, the payout sheet for the commit. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's from A to Z. So it's been fun doing that also, matching the show. It's been fun, but it's been that doing the show is stressful. There's a lot of stress in it, far more stress than me just managing a guy, having a fight or two on a card, and then we're out. No, just seeing a card from start to finish, the weigh in, it's like booking travel, like doing fighters' medicals for a whole card. If you have 8 fights, that's 16 fighters. That's a lot of people to have to oversee.
I encourage people to pose questions. Somebody here said, Marianne G said, in all fairness, Henry's saying he's been rewarded through boxing, but he's been taking off fighters. I'm assuming they're saying take. I'm not sure what that means, but it is a business, and when you're a trainer, it is a paid position, right? Talk a
Well,
little bit
so
about
so what is she saying, or what is she
it.
asking?
Henry says that you say you've been rewarded through boxing,
Right.
But you've been taking off fight. I think making money off of fighters. I think
Am
that's what the question is.
am I not allowed to get paid for my services? Am I not
Right.
allowed to get paid for my influence and my guidance? Am I not allowed to? I mean, I don't know. Does she go to work and not get a paycheck?
I think people. I think a lot of people just think it's like it is
What,
in the
charity work?
movies. In the
Nah,
movies where
nah,
people get
nah,
ripped off all the time, and but
nah.
I didn't quite understand the point there. But uh, Dan Goosen,
Mm-hmm.
rest in peace, Dan Goosen, great promoter. I only met him once when he was. I was in his office and interviewed James Toney, who was fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. What kind of influence did he have on you?
Dan was great, man. Dan was a character. Through Dan, I got to meet Pete Rose, and I think we hit on this.
Yeah, that's
Dan
crazy.
Dan was a great character, man. He was always up early, George. He was an early riser, and he would call me like at 6 in the morning. Hey, what's up, Daddy-O? You awake? I go, Dan, you're up early, man. And then I'd go to his office, the one at Ventura Boulevard, right? And I'd be like, man, Dan, what a great view. And he'd be like, oh, thank you. I've been working out. I go, no, Dan, the view, not you. But back in the day, Chris would give him shit. We play jokingly with them because Dan would wear these bright suits. And I don't know if you remember Craig Sager from the old UFC.
Yes, yes.
Chris would be like, Dan, why you dressing like Craig Sager right now? It would be, oh man, but Dan was a great guy, man. Great guy. And I was, it was sad, man. It was a sad time when he had passed because he looked out and tried to help out Chris in all aspects and even beyond boxing, things that went far beyond boxing.
Um, a lot of promoters get a bad rap, whether it's well, I don't know if it's a bad rap or not. You've heard the stories about Don King and Bob Arum, and fighters getting ripped off. Uh, Dan Goosen with you guys, he seemed to be a straight shooter. I mean, when it comes to the business.
Yeah, he did. I'm gonna tell you something. Very few people know this. With the Andre Ward, litigation, they went to court a couple of times.
Right.
And I could tell it was wearing on him. He was going through a lot. And I remember going to his hotel room the day of the weigh-in, the second Stavern fight when they fought at the Galen Center in LA. And I said, you know what, Dan, as much as I want this for Chris and I really do, I want it for you even more because I know you stood by Chris's side and I know you went through a lot recently. And yeah, it'd be nice for us, but I really want it more for you. And he looked at me and said, Daddy, oh, thank you, man. I gave him a hug and I said, he's prepared. We're going to give it our best shot. He's prepared. And it didn't go our way, but I would never forget telling him because it was genuine and I could tell he really was taken aback when I told him that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was that second Stavern fight, which
Second Stavern
Arreola
fight.
Stavern, which look, I rooted for Chris in every single fight,
Right.
especially his championship fights, and that second Stavern fight,
It
he
was
was winning
tough.
the fight.
Yeah, he was winning the fight. He was prepared. That one was hard to swallow, man, because there were fights where we went in and I wasn't surprised by the outcome. This one he prepared hard. He was in good shape. They both weighed the same. And Stavern won. He was a better man that night. But yeah, I remember seeing the scorecards that we were up on every card and I was like, ugh, those are hard to swallow. But like I told you before, it's like anything else in life. You move past it. And here I am, 11 years later, still working, and it was sure it's a disappointment. Obviously was a disappointment. I'm not even going to try to say that it isn't, and even now thinking about it in retrospect, it still is, but you move past it. You hope for better
You
days
know,
forward.
and you said that, but as we were talking about it through dinner and then the next day, it I mean, it's the past, and you look, if you don't leave your past behind you, then it's gonna sometimes it'll
Right.
haunt you or destroy you. But you still have the memories and the frustrations and the good times.
No, of course. Um, yeah, you definitely you brought back some memories when we were speaking about everything that we recorded last week, and then just in general, some of the other fights we spoke about. But it's definitely been it was a great experience working with Chris, and things I learned and maybe did wrong along the way with Chris. I'm not going to repeat those with other fighters.
Right.
Um, and then there's always things you can improve on, and but it was a great experience with Chris overall. Like I said, Chris. You asked me how are Chris and I today. Chris and I are like family. Our
Yeah.
relationship goes far beyond boxing. Our relationship goes far beyond boxing.
Well, Matthew was in the comments and he said every guy roots for Arreola, and he just was such an easy fighter to root for. I mean, he,
He's a fun guy, Georgia. You know what's funny, man? I didn't hit on this, but he's a likable dude. Like people used to ask me, like, I go, man, what you see on camera, that's really him. He's a funny guy, man. He's a, he's a funny dude. I mean, I have so many fun. Like I've always told you the frustrating part, but I have so many freaking funny ass stories with that guy. Man. I mean,
yeah.
some boxing related, some personal, but I mean, they're everybody says the same thing. Like, oh man, Chris is hilarious.
Before I let you go, I know you know all about boxing history, and tomorrow is a really big historical moment in boxing. January 24th, 2009 is when at Staples Center,
I was there. I know exactly what you're gonna talk about. That's
Margarito.
when
Manchester here tomorrow.
Margarito Mosley.
Shake hands. Good luck to both of you. Buena suerte a los dos.
16 years ago. What do you remember about that night?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I remember, George. And what was found, and that was a that was a tremendous performance, man.
I was there. I was working for HBO, so I was in the truck. And
Hmm.
when there was that delay, we knew what was going on. We kept hearing they found something in the gloves. Nazim Richardson found something in Margarito's
Right,
gloves. And then Larry Merchant broke it on the air. Um, I also shot with both fighters maybe a month before. And I
right,
remember Mosley. Now, look, all fighters are supposed to be confident. You
right,
you never interview a fighter and they say, "Oh man, I think I'm going to lose this one.
right,
I don't
right,
think I can win." But he and I and Nazim talked a lot off camera, and I mean, were supremely confident. Now Mosley's always a confident guy,
right,
but who could have ever thought that would happen? That whole thing with the gloves and Capetillo getting kicked out of boxing.
right.
It was a great night for Mosley, but I mean a bad night for the sport.
No, yeah, it was. I mean, it definitely stained Margarito's legacy, his name. Whether he knew or not, it definitely stained his name. And Capetillo, I don't remember ever seeing him in a meaningful fight again after that. Maybe
No.
he did work with other people. I don't recall, but someone, I don't know who. So I can't point blame, but somebody knew what they were doing. Somebody there were foul intentions definitely in mind. To me, I would never cheat in the sport ever. To me,
Yeah.
because you're playing with people's lives,
Right.
and if our good enough is good enough, great, and if it isn't, it isn't, but I'm never gonna cheat someone, or their chance of hurting someone uh with cheating intended. the
Did
sport is
you?
about the sport is about knocking your opponent unconscious or beating them, but through fair play also.
Right. Did you know Capetillo because he had a gym in LA, right?
Yeah, he had a gym in LA. I didn't know him. I remember we had a young pro who sparred with Margarito. Um, I forgot who he was getting ready to fight, but we sparred him a couple times. I knew I knew his manager more, Sergio Diaz at the time. I know I know
Yes.
I know Sergio pretty well, back then especially. But that was that definitely casted a shadow over his legacy because man, the Cotto victory that shot his stock through the roof with Mexican and Mexicans Americans because the Puerto Rican Mexican rivalry was big. It's still, I don't know if it's
Yep.
as big as it used to be. I
It
think
used to be big.
yeah, used to be huge. And that fight was, man, it was a heck of a fight though. Even though Cotto was winning, Margarito was hurting him, breaking. A little similar to the Chavez Taylor,
I
but
was
not
gonna
as one
say that,
sided.
right?
Not as one
Right.
sided because there were good back and forth rounds. But just what a Margarito was, 6 foot welterweight, kind of lumbering and just a big physical presence. Though Cotto was a beautiful boxer and technician, he just could never keep him off him, man. He could never keep him off him. And obviously the second fight was a different story, but both were far beyond their best at that point.
But it just it stuns me how quick time goes by because tomorrow it'll be 16 years since the
16
Margarito Mosley
years.
fight.
That's crazy to me. That's crazy to think back. Like, yeah, that's crazy. Also, Chris had fought. Oh, I'll tell you, Chris had just fought Travis Walker, 2008 Thanksgiving weekend here in Ontario. You should go back and watch that fight, George. What a heck of a fight! And about a month and a half, 2 months later, we're at the Margarito Mosley fight.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, Chris was at the fight with you.
Yeah, we were there. Like I said, he had that day, early in the day,
All right, the
HBO was
shoot.
doing promos and
Yep.
shooting with, like I said, Chris Arreola, Victor Ortiz. I remember Chad Dawson. I think Angulo. Like there was all the guys that HBO was pushing that they were all there doing punching a bag. They would throw water.
I
It was a big
remember
one.
seeing
Yeah.
the footage of that
Yeah.
shoot. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And we spent all day there. We spent all day. We're like, man, kind of dragging ass. We're like, hey, are we gonna make the fight? You know what I mean? Like, and so we ended up going to the fight. I remember getting there like, damn, this place. At the time, I'm not sure if it still does, but at the time, the Margarito Mosley fight broke the record for the attendance at Staples Center. I remember that. It
Right.
was like
I
20. It
remember
was
that
like
too.
22,000. 22,000. It was ruckus in there. It was a ruckus environment. It was cool. And then Mosey came in and took all the crowd out of the fight from the start.
You know, you forget now because he was so dominant in the whole glove situation, but Mosley was 37 going into that fight. He was like a 4-1 underdog.
Yeah, I
Not
remember.
many people thought he was going to win that fight.
No, because I'm trying to think who he had fought, but he hadn't looked great, and you thought, okay, he had just beat Cotto, Margarito's on the rise, and man, Mosley put a beating on him. I don't know if the gloves or the whatever was in his hand wraps had anything to do with it or not do with it, but man, that was a beating. That was a one-sided beating. And in a lot of people's eyes, he deserved it, you know. And I think
Well,
Mosley
yeah.
fought Mosley fought Mayweather in what, May of 2010, right? Like
Yep.
a year and a half later.
Yep.
And almost, early in the fight, he rocked Mayweather. We were at
Oh
that one
man.
too. We were at
He
that one
landed
too.
those two right hands in that first round
Yep.
and buckled Floyd. And then amazingly, I don't think he ever landed that right hand again. Certainly
Never
not like
again.
he did in the first
No,
round.
never again. Then Mayweather kind of took over from there, and I don't even think Mosley won another round after that.
I don't think he
Not
did.
not that we were there. We were there. Um, I remember we were there. The good old MGM.
Yeah. Now I imagine it's 3:07 your time. You're going back to the gym, aren't you? And
Yeah,
later.
yeah. I'll leave my house about 4:30, 4:40, and head back to the boxing gym.
And at night it's the kids, right?
So my daughter is 27. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I think you meant my kids. So yeah, so it's the amateur kids, and then some pros that have jobs that come and train in the evening also. So yeah, it's mostly that. Like Pow will be there tonight. His little cousin, all our other amateurs. We probably got about, I don't know, maybe 25 that compete. Total. And then yeah, we'll work with them, and then back at it in the morning. I'll come home and hang out, watch TV, and then repeat it all over again tomorrow. But the phone, I'll be on the phone a lot also.
Yeah, man. Well, I got a little to experience what your life was like, and it's cool to yeah, you have to have a lot of love and a lot of passion to do what you do, and it's a cool thing to see, man.
I appreciate it. No, you gotta have passion. You also gotta have patience.
Yeah,
There's a lot of patience to see these things through, And I used to tell, I tell every fighter because everybody wants to make huge money and this and that, and I tell them, look, it takes a while to get there. It's hard to make it in this business. It really is. It's hard to have it your sole occupation, and even fighters. It's hard for them to make it and sustain. After their career's done. Only a select few really get to make that life changing money where they can manage that for the rest of their lives. So
yeah,
I'm always thankful for the position I'm in, but I also work hard. I work hard. Um, and I do put a lot of time in, and like I said, not every guy makes it. We have guys who, and not every guy's a superstar.
right.
I don't think Hey, I had, I don't know, probably at least 10 fights on HBO. I don't act like, oh, this guy's. Give you an example. We had a guy who a couple years ago walked in my gym, kind of shy, kind of quiet. Tells me he boxes. Okay, where do you train? He's, oh, I'm leaving my gym. I'm 0-2. Like, okay, like, well, how many amateur fights you have? I had one. And I said, well, why would anybody turn you pro with one amateur fight and you're 0-2? I said, look, I can't go undo what they did or didn't do, but what I can do is try to get the best out of you moving forward. And that same guy is not a world beater, but he's definitely improved. And from 0-2 to now he's 6-3. So
Wow.
there's stories like that. Those are rewarding stories to me also, because I take guys to fight everywhere. I was in a couple last month at this time. I was in Toppenish, Washington. Topenish, Washington, state of Washington. Flew to Seattle. They shuttle you. It's about a 3 hour shuttle ride. Boring casino, no alcohol, no like nightlife. It's just food and gambling. That's
Yeah.
it. And didn't care. I had a guy who's training hard, deserved an opportunity. As where a fight came up. I think in April I'm going to Oregon, in Clackamas, Oregon. So I take guys, whether it be Vegas, New York, Puerto Rico. I also take guys to fight on small events, and I treat them all. Excuse me, I treat them all the same. They're all important to me.
Well, that was my point about the passion. I mean, everybody wants to talk about, oh man, you had that title fight or you had that
Right.
big money fight, but you're talking about towns I've never heard of,
Yeah. Yeah.
and something makes you do it. And I promise I'm gonna let you go, but somebody asked a question.
Hmm.
Friend of mine, Tech Dumb Dad, says, Coach, do you think that younger trainers are not training fundamentals as much as before? Because I see a lot of fundamentally flawed fighters in their mid 20s, early 30s.
I think. Look, if a fighter, this is what I have to say. If the coach thinks it's about him first over the fighter, then you have maybe a coach who thinks they know it all, thinks they're doing it for Instagram. I don't care what level you're at. It's always about the fighter first. It's always the fighter first to me. Always. He's the one who's got to get in there. He's the one that's got to fight. It's always about the fighter first. These days, you have a lot of social media coaches who will go on social media
Yes.
and flash BS network and shit that doesn't even really relate to the fight. But
Right.
they'll get likes and people, ooh, Ed, you're a real coach. Like, no, they're not. I'm okay. So you see them flashing network on Instagram. Show me a fighter they've worked with. Show me someone they developed. Show me a fight where I could, okay, correlate their, oh, they did that with, nah, so there are a lot of good young coaches out there. And I always tell people, just because you don't recognize the face in the corner doesn't mean they're without knowledge. They just haven't
Right.
had the chance yet.
Right. Well, Coach, thank you, man. Thank you for the time. And for people that jumped on late, Pow Barredo is 18 years old. He's an unbeaten 2-0 senior in high school.
Senior in high school. He's from Walnut, California. Like I said, interesting enough, I talked to him right before I jumped on with you. Um, he's 2-0. AT had about, I don't know, 110 amateur fights, multi-time national amateur champion. Got a huge, huge future in front of him. We got Nelson Oliva, 12-0, good, solid prospect. Louis Lopez, another good, rugged veteran. He's going to be fighting on a pro box card March 8th here in Southern California. I've got a heavyweight, Oscar Torres, who's 9-0, says he's going to be returning back to the ring. So yeah, we we're staying busy, and I've got pros of all levels. Some guys are just solid journeymen who go out there and can beat prospects, and sometimes they lose, but they're earning a living. And then I'm also working with Las Lorenzana. He's out of San Diego's 15-0. I worked with him for one fight. He won. He's fighting again March 1st in TJ. I have Anthony Chavez fighting on our local show that we're doing February 28th. That's the show we're throwing. So I have February 28th locally, March 1st. Might have Pow fighting on the Golden Boy show first week of March, and then Louis Lopez March 8th. And then the
That's
Golden Boys the
awesome.
week after that.
Man, that's awesome. Shout out your social media for all the people who are on social media. Where can they find
Okay.
you?
So on Facebook, my name is Henry Ramirez, just that. On Instagram, it's Riverside Boxing, which I'm on there pretty actively. And on Twitter, X, it's H Ramirez Boxing. Though I'm trying to get Riverside Boxing to my handle, but someone's got it and they don't use the profile, so I'm trying to get help on how to steal it from them. So yeah, Riverside Boxing on Instagram, H Ramirez Boxing on Twitter, and Henry Ramirez on Facebook.
Well, listen,
You could catch me, George, at the Yard House sometimes on Wednesday night, Friday night. That's my go-to
Riverside
spot.
Yard House.
Riverside Yard House. That's where I took George.
Well, I plan on coming out there again, man, and I'm gonna stay in touch with you. I appreciate the time. We gotta talk. We gotta talk some more boxing at some
No,
point because I could
absolutely,
talk to you
man.
all day.
Oh, absolutely. It was George. It was great having you out here. It was great having you out here. And then everybody at the gym like, hey, who are all those cameras? Like, oh, he worked for HBO for like 15, 16 years. Everyone's like, oh, for real? And when you just when you throw the HBO around, it gets that reaction still. You know what I
It
mean?
still does,
It
man.
still
And that's a
does.
whole it still does. But I appreciate your time and we'll stay in touch. And I know your day is
Absolutely.
not over. Your day is not
No,
over.
no, it's just getting started, and then off there we'll talk about our things in common, George.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, brother. We'll
All right,
talk
brothers.
soon.
Take care, man. Anytime, man.
All right, man.
All right. Bye.
The great Henry Ramirez talking boxing. Man, want to thank him for the time. Had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning. I don't know what happened. My microphone, I was getting some feedback, so I just pulled the mic out. But make sure you follow Henry on his Instagram and Pow Barredo, Barredo. He's 18 years old, 130 pounder. He's a senior in high school. A lot of promise, but Henry is a guy that, first of all, he's a good dude and he loves the sport. And I've seen him working with the kids, working with the pros, working with the kids. So it was a pleasure. We're going to talk some more boxing soon. I appreciate everybody who was here.